All right, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about one of the most unbelievable financial implosions in recent memory, the absolute train wreck that was the crypto exchange FTX and the downfall of its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried.
If you want a sense of just how catastrophic this whole thing was, you just have to listen to this quote. It's from John J. Ray III. Now, this is the guy they brought in to clean up the Enron bankruptcy. So when a guy who has literally seen the worst of the worst says he's never seen anything like this, you know it's off the charts bad. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here?
Oh, it all starts and ends with this one guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, or as everyone called him, SBF. And you have to understand, he wasn't just building a company. No, he was carefully crafting a myth, a really powerful story about himself that totally captivated the world. And this, right here, shows you the huge gap between the image and the reality. The world saw this kind of quirky, disheveled anti-hero, right? The guy in cargo shorts with the messy hair, but behind that whole act, he was an MIT grad, a killer trader from a super elite firm called Jane Street, basically a calculating financial prodigy who knew exactly what he was doing. And this was his cover story, his public reason for getting filthy rich, something called effective altruism. The whole idea was that he was earning to give. He claimed he was building this massive fortune not for himself, oh no, but to solve the world's biggest problems. It was a perfect narrative, right? It made him seem like a totally different kind of billionaire.
And you know what? For a while, it worked. It worked spectacularly. SBF and his exchange, FTX, just shot to the absolute top of the crypto world. They were everywhere.
I mean, at its peak, the FTX empire was impossible to ignore. They were running the whole show from a luxury penthouse in the Bahamas. Their logo was slapped on Formula One cars and sports arenas. SBF was throwing around huge political donations in the US. He was on stage with former presidents. He was seen as the good guy, the ethical, respectable face of a pretty chaotic industry. But, and this is a huge but, underneath that shiny, perfect surface, there was a massive problem brewing. See, SBF also ran a trading firm, a hedge fund called Alameda Research. And the line between FTX, the exchange that was supposed to be safely holding customer money, and Alameda, his personal high-risk casino, was getting dangerously and very secretly blurred. And this is the moment the story turns from this eccentric success into just plain, old-fashioned fraud. Because that entire glittering empire, it was being held up by a very, very big secret. So you might be asking, how did this whole fraud actually work? Well, it was shockingly simple. Step 1. Customers like you and me deposit billions of our own dollars into FTX, thinking it's safe. But then, step 2, those funds were secretly siphoned over to Alameda through a hidden backdoor in FTX's software. And with that money, Alameda made incredibly risky bets and used it to pay off its own gigantic debts. It was just a staggering betrayal of trust. So to cover its tracks, Alameda's books were propped up by billions of dollars worth of a crypto token called FTT, a token that FTX itself had just created out of thin air. I mean, think about it. It's like a bank printing its own monopoly money and then using that fake money to pretend it's solvent. The whole thing was a house of cards, just waiting for a light breeze to knock it over. And that breeze? It came in November of 2022. The entire multi-billion-dollar empire didn't just stumble. It completely imploded with a speed that was just breathtaking. I mean, look how fast this all went down. November 2nd, a leaked document raises the first red flag. Just 4 days later, a rival CEO tweets that he's dumping all his FTT tokens, which of course crashes the price and sparks a massive panic. By November 8th, you've got a full-blown bank run. FTX has to freeze withdrawals. And just 3 days after that, a last-ditch rescue deal falls apart. And it's over. Bankruptcy. From the top of the world to total collapse in about 10 days. And when the dust finally settled, the reality was just horrifying. This wasn't a market crash, it wasn't a bad investment. Billions and billions of dollars of regular people's money had just vanished. So what followed was, as you can imagine, one of the biggest white-collar crime cases in a generation. The reckoning for the so-called king of crypto had finally arrived. SBF was arrested, he was extradited back to the United States, and he was put on trial. And after the jury heard from his own inner circle, his closest friends and colleagues, their decision was fast and it was unanimous. Guilty on all of the major counts, including wire fraud and conspiracy. And the sentence for pulling off one of the biggest financial frauds in American history? 25 years in federal prison.
The whole legal process was just a whirlwind. I mean, going from a Bahamas penthouse to a New York courtroom, in the end, it was the testimony of his own closest allies that sealed his fate. They laid it all out, exposing the deep rot at the core of the empire he built. And really, that's what this all boils down to. It leaves us with this one big, lingering question. The whole FTX saga wasn't really just about crypto or finance. It was about the incredible power of a good story. And it makes you wonder, how many other empires out there, in tech, in finance, everywhere, are built less on solid ground and more on a story that we all just really, really want to believe?